What's going on, everybody? Today we are in Mount Carmel Cemetery just outside of Chicago, and there's a lot of interesting people buried here, and it's just an enormous cemetery, and today we're going to go through it a little bit, and I'm going to show you some of the more known and notorious names, and just some other random odds and ends things that we can find in here, so come along. Just inside the front gate and to the right is the grave of Al Capone. Capone was a famous Chicago gangster who started off in New York City under Johnny Torrio. He learned how to use violence and to build an empire from a guy named Frankie Rio, and when Torrio moved his racket to Chicago, he brought Capone with him to build an empire of nightclubs and illegal liquor during the Prohibition. In 1925, Torrio left the business to retire to Florida, giving power to Capone, who overpowered and often killed off his rivals. His reign at the top started crashing down after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929 when federal agents vowed to get Capone off the streets, and the only thing they could ever pin on him was tax evasion. Capone was able to grease the wheels and get away with pretty much everything up until that point, and had become somewhat of a folk hero to many, opening soup kitchens and things like that. He ended up doing time at Alcatraz, and his health started going downhill from syphilis when he went back to Florida for the remainder of his life, passing away in 1947. Now, as you can see, people chip off pieces of these stones. Just kind of a morbid souvenir, but, you know, kind of disrespectful because it is their family property. Now, I'm not trying to condone anything that Al Capone did, but just trying to help remember the history. Now, Teresa Capone was Al's mother, and next to her was Gabriel Capone, who was Capone's father. Now, both Capone's mother and father were born in Italy, so Al was the first generation of Capones born in America. Now, this is Ralph Capone. Ralph was Al's older brother. He was nicknamed Bottles, and he ran a business distributing bottled water, and it's said that he was also involved in Al's operation, but in a limited capacity, but I don't believe it was ever proven. Now, this was also another brother of Al's, Ermino. He lived to be 82 years old, and his wife, Mary. And just underneath him is Matthew Capone, who was another brother of Al's, and he owned a tavern in Cicero. Passed away in 1967. Next to him was Salvatore Capone, otherwise known as Frank. Frank was Al's older brother, and he was also involved in the operation. He was a violent guy and was shot by police while interfering with an election, trying to intimidate voters to lean a certain way to elect officials who would help the Capone organization. His passing affected Al a great deal, and it was said that after Frank's death that Al Capone became a lot more violent of a person. This is Ralph Capone Jr., who was Al's nephew, son of Ralph Sr., and Umberto, who looks like he got a visit from a goose here. It's a little disrespectful, but he was the younger brother. He changed his name to Albert Raiola legally in 1942, and he lived a pretty upstanding life. Now, most days when you come here, you'll find a lot of things by Al's grave, whether it be flowers, alcohol, cigars. Today there really isn't anything here, which is kind of unusual, but this is the gravesite of Al Capone. Now let's check out some of the other gangsters that are buried here in this same cemetery. Now, just to give you an idea of how big and beautiful this cemetery is, just take a look at this. A lot of these stones have statues and different figures on top. It's really quite a magnificent place to visit if you've never been. Now, just over here is the mausoleum that holds the remains of Sam Giancana. Now, Sam was born in 1908. He ran the Chicago outfit from 1957 until 1966. In 1960, he was recruited by the CIA in a plot to assassinate Fidel Castro. In 1965, he was convicted of contempt of court, served 1 year in prison, and then fled to Mexico. In 1974, he was deported back to the U.S., returning to Chicago, and he was killed in his Oak Park home while cooking dinner on June 19th of 1975. Now, there are quite a few mausoleums that are like this, just family plots in this cemetery. That's one of the reasons why walking around Mount Carmel here is so enjoyable. But this is the final resting place of Sam Giancana. Now, buried just over here, while not a mobster, he did play a mobster on TV a few times, as well as police officers. Dennis Farina was born in 1944, and he was known for Manhunter, Midnight Run, Get Shorty. He was in Law and Order, and he also was the second host after Robert Stack for Unsolved Mysteries. Now, he served 3 years in the U.S. Army and then 18 years in the Chicago Police Department from 1967 till 1985. He advanced from a patrolman to a detective, which he would later use with a lot of his characters on TV. He was a lifelong Cubs fan, and he passed away July 22nd, 2013 at his home in Scottsdale, Arizona. Now, just up here is the final resting place of the Jenna crime family brothers. Now, they operated in the Prohibition era in Chicago, and from 1921 till 1925, the family was headed by 6 brothers known as the Terrible Gennas. Now, they were allies with the Chicago outfit, and the guys' names were Angelo, who went by the name Bloody, or who was nicknamed Bloody. Then there was Antonio the Gentleman, Mike the Devil, and then there was Peter, Sam, and Vincenzo, who was also known as Jim. Now, they were involved in bootlegging, and they obtained a federal license to legally manufacture industrial alcohol, but they sold it illegally and operated from Chicago's Little Italy. They started selling alcohol outside of their territory, which was a huge no-no back then, and they clashed with Northside leader Dion OBrien, he went to Johnny Torrio and Mike Merlo to get the Gennas to stop, and Torrio and Merlo refused, and O'Banion and his gang, they started hijacking the whiskey shipments coming in from the Gennas. Torrio then ordered a hit on O'Banion, who was running a flower shop, and it started a huge gang war in Chicago. Bugs Moran took over the North Side, and he shot and wounded Johnny Torrio outside of his home. Torrio fled, leaving Al Capone as the boss. The North Side gang took aim at the Gennas. Bugs Moran killed Angelo. A few weeks later, Mike the Devil was killed by police. Antonio was killed in an ambush. And Jim, Sam, and Pete all fled the city of Chicago. Now, this is a pretty nice burial spot. They have benches with the name Jenna engraved on both sides of the mausoleum. But this is the final resting place of the Jenna brothers. Now, right here is the final resting place of Dion OBrien, otherwise Dean OBrien is who he went by in life. He was given the nickname Dion by the newspapers, but he was the main rival of Johnny Torrio and Al Capone during the bootlegging wars. He led the North Side gang until 1924. On November 3rd of 1924, O'Banion had a heated exchange with Angelo Genna over gambling debts from a casino owned by the North Side gang and the Torrio Syndicate. This heated exchange was taken as a personal insult when O'Banion demanded his debts be paid within a week. Torrio then ordered the hit on O'Banion at his flower shop on November 10th, 1924, and this ignited the entire Chicago gang wars. Now, I should note that there are way more notable people in this cemetery than I could ever cover in one video, but I will come back and do many more. But for today, let's keep moving. Now, right over here is Vincenzo Garibaldi. He was professionally known as Machine Gun Jack McGurn. He worked with Al Capone, and he was part of the Chicago outfit. His most high-profile hit was North Side gang leader Earl Hymie Weiss on October 11th of 1926. Now, it's said that he helped plan the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, but that association could never be proven. He was shunned by the Chicago outfit after apparently appearing on the Public Enemies list, and then he tried his hand as a professional golfer, which didn't exactly pan out. And just a few years after that, February 15th of 1936, he was confronted by and killed by 3 men one day after the 7-year anniversary of the massacre. They ended up leaving a Valentine's card with a poem near his body. The card reportedly read, "You've lost your job, you've lost your dough, your jewels and cars and handsome houses, but things could still be worse, you know. At least you haven't lost your trousers." I thought that was kind of a fascinating connection to the massacre. But this is Machine Gun Jack McGurn. Now, just a little ways away from Al Capone on the other side of the entrance is Frank Nitti. Now, Frank Nitti was the first cousin and bodyguard to Al Capone, and he was in charge of all the finances flowing through the organization. He became acting boss of the Chicago outfit after Al Capone, and under Frank Nitti's leadership, the Chicago outfit branched out and to take control of labor unions. He survived a shooting at his office by 2 detectives, and it's thought that the attempt was ordered by Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak. In 1943, many top members of the Chicago outfit were being indicted for extorting the Hollywood film industry, including numerous film studios. Fearing going back to prison, Nitti left his home after breakfast the day before his grand jury appearance and took his own life only blocks away from his home at a local rail yard. This is the final resting place of Frank Rio, known as Frankie Rio. He was one of Al Capone's most trusted and most loyal men, and he was also an alleged gunman in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Now, after Al Capone went to prison, Frankie Rio was briefly considered to take over as the boss of the Chicago outfit, but was passed over by Frank Nitti. He passed away on February 23rd of 1935 from a heart attack. Now, this right here is the mausoleum of Earl Hymie Weiss. He was the leader of the North Side Gang and a bitter rival of Al Capone. It's said that Weiss was the only man that Capone ever feared. Now, Weiss took over after the death of Dion OBrien, and Weiss and Bugs Moran ambushed Johnny Torrio outside of his house. Torrio survived the shooting, but he fled the area and handed over power to Al Capone. Now, on October 11th of 1926, Weiss was present for jury selection for a murder trial of one of his allies, and he was gunned down. Now, if you followed any of the stories that I've told on this video, you'll notice that all of these guys who were enemies in life are now buried together in death. Now, that's pretty much all I have right now for this first video from Mount Carmel Cemetery south of Chicago. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, be sure to subscribe, and check out some of the other videos. I will do another video here in the near future and catch some of the locations that I missed today. But thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day, everybody.